until my slides come up, I just wanted to thank both Pavel and Tore, Health Samurai and Human API are both doing a lot for the standard. So thank you for putting this together. Let's give them a big round of applause, both of them. Thank you. And they both touched upon the idea of FHIR being really a community. And how many of you have like been to FHIR events before, or been to meetups? Okay, how many of you are like first timers? Oh, nice. That's awesome to see. So it's almost half and half. And quick show of hands, how many of you are developers? Software engineers, data scientists. Okay. How many doctors? Nice. Awesome. Okay. My talk is going to be kind of in the middle of both. How many of you are neither a doctor nor a developer? It's totally fine. All right. Cool. So my name is Omar, and my talk is going to be about how can FHIR improve clinical decision support and also guideline adoption. And I can't talk about that without talking about how miserable doctors are in the United States. That's the other side of my presentation. I know a little bit about that. I'm kind of an expert about doctor misery because I was a miserable doctor myself. I graduated from medical school in Egypt, practiced there, left there in 2011 after the revolution, came here in 2013 thinking that practicing medicine is going to be a breeze, and then realized that being a doctor in the States could be equally miserable in certain contexts. Doctors also graduate with a humongous amount of debt, which adds insult to injury. And that was a career path for me, being a physician that I can, ultimately, being a physician in the US is a very rewarding endeavor. You can be making a lot of money and be rewarded for all the years that you've put in through residency and through patient care. But now it's being tied to this equation between cost and quality, and cost. And how can you deliver the best possible care for your patients at the least cost possible? And the ACA, I think, has done a lot of great things for American healthcare, but doctors specifically are kind of squeezed in between those two mammoths. And luckily in the US, there's a lot of research that goes around what better outcomes look like, how do we provide the best quality of care, and what kind of procedures are working or not. And as this body of research grows year after year, what we try to do is bring them all into these nice and clean guidelines. And for the doctors that raised their hands, can you please raise your hands one more time? Okay. Now, how many of you follow medical guidelines? We have one. You are a hero, sir. So the idea here is that once we have medical guidelines written down neatly in a PDF, every physician in the States is going to be able to follow them and provide the best recommendations based on research. Of course, that's not true. That's not what happens. That's not what we had hoped for. There still is 1/3 of all the medical US dollars being spent on healthcare do go to waste. Every 1 hour, there's an estimated 38 number of lives that are lost because of medical errors. Physicians, if you ask them, and as a show of hands here, there's a very low adoption of these standards and guidelines. And so really the question here is, can FHIR possibly play a bigger role in this? And there are a lot of issues about how randomized controlled trials happen, whether these research points should make it to the guidelines or not. But assuming there are a lot of credible guidelines out there, can we make it easier in the same way that FHIR is simplifying the use of electronic medical records and the use of data? In order to explain that, I have to go back to this guy, Hippocrates, father of medicine. And this is an inscription. He's probably writing the very first medical guideline to exist ever here. And it's this basic idea that I figured out how something works. Let's write a manual for someone else. And medicine is never a cookbook profession, but this idea of creating a guideline has existed forever. And then experts generally throughout the ages started trying to put these together and trying to kind of depict or describe this for other doctors and physicians, what they've found in their own research and their own practice. And experts can have various opinions and have practices that are either proven or not. I don't know what these guys are doing over here. I've been to parties in San Francisco that looked like that. But then generally, then we went into the paper age and we started documenting these. And these guidelines are available for physicians in the form of paper documents. And probably the biggest advancement happened in 1992, where the Institute of Medicine, then called that, decided to put all these clinical practice guidelines into one document. Then finally can be available to doctors. And then a lot of institutions that you have heard of, so the American Medical Association, the American Academy for Family Physicians for Primary Care, AHRQ, they and many others have put together a lot of very legitimate documents that are very comprehensive in terms of how to provide care, how to do risk assessment, what kind of solutions have worked or what kind of treatments work best or not. That's how they look like. Now, this is a very comprehensive document for chronic kidney disease that details the lab results you're looking for, how to stratify a patient in terms of risk. But it is a PDF document where you have to read throughout. It goes for at least 50 or so pages. So how can we expect doctors to sit and read these documents on top of trying to figure out how they're getting paid, which is becoming harder and harder as we go in time, on top of all the documentation needs that they have? It's not easy. And of course, then there's Medscape. Medscape is where a lot of aggregation of this information happens. It's a website, so that's an advancement. But it's still very hard to find all this at the time when you actually need it. And then there are mobile applications. This is something called UpToDate, which probably every doctor in the room knows about. It, again, has all these things in a mobile version, so we're getting closer. But we're not quite effective yet because it's still, at the end, you're reading a PDF that you have to scroll through. So usability-wise, it's not there. A lot of the people in the room probably understand what the singularity is, and it's this concept that human and machine can one day coexist as maybe a different species even. But the idea here is that machines are accelerating at an exponential pace in terms of intelligence. And us humans are more modest than that. We've been on a good run, but at one point, what I'm interested in for healthcare is and Dr. Daniel Kraft mentions this a lot for those of you who hear him, it's not about artificial intelligence, but about intelligence augmentation. So it's not AI, it's about IA. How can we augment the intelligence of the doctor? And now, of course, we live in the world of electronic medical records, where you can give alerts and you can give all these notices and notifications when something happens, but we also know how usable these electronic medical records are. And huge work now happening on how can we make them more usable. And so the question still remains, how can we bring all this body information, how can we get all this research and clinical guidelines and put them in the hands of physicians when they need them? And now this is a study that was done in Catalonia, in Spain, not in the US, and it was exploring this idea of computerized clinical guidelines. So we used to have medical records in paper-based formats, and then we went to electronic medical records. Now how can we go from medical guidelines to computerized electronic medical guidelines? And so they bought a bunch of physicians. They tested this around, who delivered care to over 200,000 patients. And the one rule that they said or set for the study, and it was a pre-post kind of study, where they told them to use these computerized clinical practice guidelines twice a day. And there were physicians that used them, physicians that did not use them. The point of the study was to see the efficacy on management, diagnosis, treatment, control, and follow-up of 5 different diseases. And these are the results. It was very obvious that the management control and follow-up of cardiovascular and hypertension diseases was way better when these guidelines were used. And this was the result of the study. And you can see a huge difference. The gray bars are the users and the black bars are the non-users of these electronic clinical guidelines. So giant improvements. And what we're trying to figure out is how can we even improve that further? And that's the initiative that we're currently working on at ASHA. And I've been working on integrating medical records at big payers and healthcare systems, along with my co-founder Matt, with the beautiful blonde beard in the back. And we've been kind of working on these things with FHIR, using a lot of the things that Pavel discussed early on, like conversions and stuff. But now we're more interested in how can we use this standard to advance things or create new resources that are not there yet, especially in the area of clinical guidelines. So in FHIR, it's already there's already a bunch of steps that have been taken, but not enough. And I'm here and lucky enough to be able to talk to you guys about this, and want to reach out to you to see whoever is interested in helping kind of develop these resources further. That we want to work with you, and please reach out after the talk. But this is an example for a chronic disease management guideline. So now we have FHIR clinical guidelines, and it's only version 0.1.0. There are 5 of the diseases, and I'll tell you which ones exactly. But basically, you can go in on the FHIR website and browse like these flowcharts, and essentially every guideline is a flowchart, and it's just breaking them down into actual code, whether it's XML or whichever of the FHIR formats that you want to use. And so this is a comparison of how clinical guidelines look like and how FHIR creates them now. And so each part of the guideline is broken down into a tag, and there are plenty of resources, but that's the effort that we want to put in. And this is what we believe in, like these development of these FHIR resources can actually help doctors leverage this data when they need them, not before or after. As you can see, the scale of everything is exploded on my presentation. But this is the process. This is from the FHIR work group as well. And the idea is bringing knowledge into action. And so breaking down this body of knowledge into little bits of action and or actionable items based on the FHIR guidelines. So it's essentially kind of the same idea of breaking down a CCD or a version 3 HS7 into small FHIR resources. So FHIR is perfect for this. There's a lot of excitement around this piece of data, and basically the idea is that if we use it right, we can close the loop. So putting the data at the right time and actually affecting the actions of physicians will create new data that would then go back to the research institutions and tell them whether these guidelines actually make sense or not. And so we might close the loop, but right now it's an open loop. These are the 6 guidelines that have been created on the FHIR work group. We've been working with the chronic kidney disease one. They're pretty good, pretty well documented, and very well thought through. We want to start working on heart failure, diabetes, and AFib. We've done some work on AFib so far. So again, if anyone here wants to help us with this, and we're trying to connect with the actual work group that's in charge and see how we can support them further. There's a lot of good research out there, so I can help you find whatever disease that interests you. We think there's also a major opportunity to kind of look into these guidelines. So in summary, these guidelines have been around for decades now, but now is really the time that we can help leverage technologies, FHIR being the most important one of them, to actually put them in the hands of doctors and influence the quality of care and give patients the best care that we can. So please reach out if you're interested at hello@asha.health or omar@asha.health. Reach out and let us know that you want to work, and we'll tell you where to start. Thank you.
So the slide before this slide, you talk about you try to computerize the guidelines for those symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And the one on top is already done, and the one on the bottom is what you're working on.
Correct, yep. These are the ones that are done. These are the ones that we think should be next.
Thanks.
Yep.
Are you guidelines in CQL or something else? How are those actually encoded?
No, they're a lot of them exist in a paper format, like a PDF format.
But I mean, when you're building these as electronic guidelines, are you like writing
Yeah.
clinical quality language scripts, or is it something else?
No, it's I'm not familiar with these clinical quality scripts.
Query language. Yeah.
Oh, query language. Yeah, SQL. Yeah,
Quality language. What he showed in the previous one, I think that was CQL right there.
Yeah. So right there is.
it
SQL,
is.
right? So basically, you store this. You sort of electronize the whole guideline, and then you allow doctor use SQL to query the knowledge.
Yeah, and this is not something that I did. This is from the FHIR website. So this is a clinical work group from FHIR created this guideline for CKD, and so you can it's available in various formats. So it's available in JavaScript and available in XML and available in various formats. I think it depends on what the system is. So if you're trying to integrate with a certain electronic medical record, you should be speaking that language, but that's the power of FHIR. So we're trying to make it compliant with the FHIR standard at the end of the day.
Yeah, because the FHIR is giving you the data exchange API, right? But eventually you
exactly.
have data. You study somebody to query to work on, right?
Yes.
So that's why I asked you the question: are you going to use SQL or use different languages?
The prevalency of FHIR is mostly with the top EHRs like Epics and Cerners and Allscripts of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody or ACOs or big hospitals are going to use those. But if you look at individual physicians or smaller ACOs, if you go to rural areas where doctors are there, they're still going to rely on SaaS-based EHRs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all of them are FHIR enabled.
Yeah.
How are you guys trying to reach out to?
That's a dying market.
We like to think that.
It's a shrinking market.
It's true. Everybody is consolidating. I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the time it catches on, that whole segment is gone, pretty much. With the rate that everyone's being acquired, every small practice being acquired, we're just going out of business. We're closing down.
Yeah.
All those big entities are just swallowing everything.
There's a high time of mergers of like big health systems buying smaller ones. All the major EMRs are going to be on FHIR. We do believe that that's going to be the future. And as for now, we're not going to spend too much time integrating with or writing like custom code.
Are they going to be on FHIR or are they going to support FHIR as data exchange? Question.
Support FHIR as a data exchange.
The interface.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll be around to the end, so happy to answer other questions and talk to those who might be interested in working with us. Thank you.